Alright guys, so in this video we're going to start with reducers, and so what we're going to need to do is create an auth reducer and then an index, and the index reducer we're going to actually combine reducers so that we can have multiple different reducers, so we can break them up into files. You guys will see what I mean. Let's go ahead and close these, and in reducers here I'm going to create a new file called authReducer.js, and now what we need to do is we can do a few things. We're going to specify a default state, and we're going to basically create a switch statement that we can tell what action was dispatched. So if I look in auth actions, we're dispatching type login. Okay, and we could also make a register function, which would take in their email and password, and it would, well, let's do that actually just to show you. Export const register equals email pass. So we're going to return the same as last time, just a type, which is register, and a payload, which is going to be an object with email equals email and pass equals pass. So let's save this. Now we've got two actions. Okay, so we're going to need to create a switch statement inside the reducer because this is getting dispatched, and it's going to dispatch into the reducer, which will then modify the internal state of the application. So let's go ahead and create a const called default state, and this is going to be user, and it's going to be just a blank object or null, and token is going to be null. So with our API, when I was logging in through the Explorer page there, it was returning a token that I was setting in the Explorer page. That's the token that we're going to be setting here, and the user is going to be just the user account. So now that we've got the default state defined, we're going to create const auth equals, and here we're going to say state equals default state, and so this will create the default state if there's no state, basically. And action is going to be the thing that we dispatch, that object that has type and payload, and then we're going to put this inside of an arrow function, and here we're going to create a switch for action dot type, and so we're going to have to create cases. So on the case that it is login, so if action.type equals login, what we're going to do is we're going to return, there we go, an object, because the default state is an object, and we're going to go ... state, so this will leave the rest of the state alone and allow us to specify what fields get changed. So user is going to be action.payload. And there would be a token in a real authenticated call. So once we log in, we would get the response object, which would have a token. We don't have that right now, so we're going to say token is 1. All right, and that's all we need to do. Well, kinda. Let's go ahead and within the switch, we're going to say default. So if none of the cases have matched, we're going to just return the existing state. And I'm going to save this. Now we can actually go through and add well, actually we need to combine these reducers. We only have one reducer right now, but in the future we will have a page reducer, admin reducer, etc., that each will have different properties and functions in them, in the props basically. So what we need to do is within reducers, we're going to create a new file called index.js, and here we're going to import, open up curly braces, combine reducers from, that's not what I wanted to do, from Redux. Okay, we're combining reducers from Redux. And then what we need to do is import the all of our reducers that we have. So right now we have an auth reducer. So we're going to import auth from current directory auth reducer. All right. And then we're going to export default combine reducers, and we're going to wrap this within, well, basically an object here, and we're just going to return our reducers. So it would be a list, like this is an object right here, so this would be a list. So auth is going to equal auth. I don't need to specify key and val. If they're both the same, I can just do this right here, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Now let's save this. Now we've got a reducer that we can use within our application. So that's awesome. What we're going to have to do is use that at our top level. So what we do is let's close that. Let's open up index.js. And here we're going to have to import create store. We're going to have to import provider, and we're also going to have to import our main reducer, which is going to be a root reducer. So let's, I guess that, that's all we really have to do. Let's go ahead and start doing it. So under service worker here, I'm going to import in curly braces create store from Redux. And this is going to be the function that we actually create the store from our root reducer. We're going to have to import root reducer from reducers, and this will get the reducer from index.js. And then we're going to have to import in curly braces provider from React Redux. All right, we've got everything we need here. So all we need to do is two very simple things. We need to create the store. So we're going to set const store equals create store, and it's a function that's going to take in our root reducer. That's all we need. And then what we need to do is actually not wrap, like we're not going to wrap this in anything, but we are going to make the app a child of provider. So open up provider, and we're going to set store is going to be equal to store. So it's just a regular React component, and I'm going to copy app here so I can get out of there and paste it here. Now I'm going to save this. Can't resolve reducers. Oh, okay. Yeah, we forgot. Well, I forgot. We have index.js, and then it's going to look in store. Yeah, so one sec. Just need to update this. We're going to save this now. Oh, auth reducer does not contain a default export imported as auth. And that is because we forgot to export it. So if we go into the auth reducer here, we see auth is the const we've specified as basically what's handling state changes. We haven't exported that. So let's go ahead and export default auth and then save. Now we're getting cannot read property email of undefined. And this could be if we wrapped the login component incorrectly. Let me see. With formac. And so with formac is wrapping the login component. I need to move this, I believe, here. So I just moved one bracket so that connect is now wrapping the entire with formac. And it says you must pass a component to the function returned by connect. Instead, received object. Okay. So it received an object. We will get this. Could, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to actually, in the wrapping the component in connect, we actually need to pass the map dispatch to props and match state to props. Otherwise, it won't wrap it. So let's go ahead and remove the connect from up there. All right, and so in here, where we just have the login component, we're going to run connect like this. There we go. And I'm going to, and then we need to put another one there. All right. So then the connect method, now we need to specify map state to props and map dispatch to props and save. And here we have our login form now. So I'm going to inspect this and go into React so that we can see what's going on. So we look up at the top, we see provider. And then here under props, we have store, we have children, and in state, we have store and subscription. So that is all Redux stuff that we don't really need to use. If we scroll down here and we look at connect login, here we have that, and then login right here, we should get this props login, which we do. So props, and we also get this props auth. So the dispatch are functions that we can configure to pass to this function. So now when we log in, we're going to need to call this .props.login, and we can also access this .props.auth, which right now is an empty object. Except we actually want the connect function to wrap with formac, so that formac can also get the this.props.login in the handle submit. So what we're going to have to do is just rearrange this a little bit. I'm going to take this connect function right here. I'm going to copy and delete. And I'm going to paste it back up here. And then we're going to open up a new bracket there. And so the connect function is taking in map state to props, match dispatch to props, and then it's wrapping the entire with formic, which in turn is wrapping login component. So I'm going to save, and this should work. And there we go. So if I right click here and I go into React, we should see that the formic now has the ability to access the props. So with formic, we have props, auth, and login. And then formic right here, we have the same thing, auth and login. So now in the handle submit, we can also grab the login prop. So let's do that. So in the handle submit, we're going to get values, set submitting, and login from the props. And what we're going to do is we're going to call this .props.login, and we're going to pass values.email and values.password, which I think is what we called it. Yes, it is. And then I'm going to save it. Now, what this is going to do is within our login component, we have two fields, email and password. And when we submit the form, we should get the behavior of handle submit. I think we added that to the form element. On submit, this props handle submit. And then this handle submit function should get the login props. I believe it should. And then it's going to call this .props.login, and we will see our action right here being dispatched, and this is basically going to call the auth reducer, or sorry, the auth actions. It's going to call this login function, which is then going to pass this stuff over to the auth reducer, which is going to set this stuff, and the login page should update with auth in the props. And I'll show you what I mean. It's kind of like using this .set state, except instead of setting the state on a component level, you're setting it on the app level. So let's go ahead and type my email and my pass, and then hit login. Cannot read props of undefined, right? Because we just have a login function there, not this .props.login. So what I need to do is we're passing it in right here. I don't need to have this .props. I can just call login. I'm going to save this. Enter my super secret password and hit login. And it says login is not a function, which is interesting. Let me refresh this here. So the problem that we're facing right now is the formic in the handle submit. Yeah, so handle submit, login, and it was saying login is not a function. So with formic login, connect with formic login, we should have, I mean, if we don't handle submit like this, what we could do is handle it directly within the component itself, which I think we'll do. So rather than using formic's built-in handle submit function, what we're going to do is on submit, we're going to get the event and then we're going to call a function. So I'm going to remove this .props.handle submit. All the validation is happening in real time anyway. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this .props.login, and we're going to pass this .props.values.email and this .props.values.password. And I'm going to save. So this is on the login level that we have access to that prop to log in. So again, let's go ahead and add an email and password and hit login. And we forgot to say prevent default. Save this. Now let's try again. Log in and go into provider, router, let's go into admin, and then we can look at format. Let's see the auth. We can see that token is equal to 1 and user has been set. So this now, the auth props can be available to any component that we need it to. And that's why we use Redux instead of state level components. If we use the state, then we really have nowhere globally that we can set this auth. And this, this is going to have a token in it, which we're going to need to, in order to make API calls and whatnot. So just a quick recap of this, just so you guys, if you missed anything, then hopefully we can clear all this up. The login function, when you hit login, it calls this .props.login with the email and the password. Now this .props.login is equal to this function here. This is this .props.login, and it is because we're mapping dispatch to props. So we're passing in the dispatch method here, which has the ability to basically dispatch actions in Redux. So we're dispatching auth actions, which is how we imported it, .login, and it's coming in here and it's calling this function here because this is exported as login. So auth actions, the file name, .login, and this is returning this. Now it doesn't really specify where it's returning to, but it is returning to the reducer. Now in this instance, the auth reducer is watching for if the action type is login, and it's setting this global state, which then updates it across all components. And so that's why it's really handy to use Redux, and especially if you're doing anything big or any React project at all where you're dealing with multiple components and you need a state across multiple components, it's going to make sense to use Redux, and that's exactly why we're doing it. Now in the next video, I guess we'll create an API function that we can actually call the login function with this and get a response from it, and then dispatch the response of the API call to the reducer.